Do you recognize this young aspiring graduate? Well, you should, and we'll tell you why this week on Motoring 99.
TSN's Motoring 99 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas Car Care, the way it should be.
This is the brand new Oldsmobile Silhouette, the Premier Edition. A van that comes with not one, but two remotes, and we'll tell you more about that later on. Hello everybody, and welcome to Motoring 99. You know, one of the things I've learned over the years is never take anything for granted. And that's kind of how we feel here on Motoring, because since 1988, we've been fortunate enough to bring you stories each week about cars and the people who drive them. Sure, it's a job, but I'd be lying if I said we didn't enjoy it. And you know, like the people we meet each week, everybody on this program either has a passion for cars or simply appreciates them for getting them from point A to point B. Well, we're going to begin this week by taking a closer look at a man who has a passion for anything on four wheels. He's that guy in the soapbox each week on Motoring, and of course I'm talking about Jim Kenzie.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
All these electronic devices can add very much to the convenience of your automobile, although personally I draw the line at in-car facts.
It was back in 1989 when Motoring viewers first met Jim on Kenzie's Corner.
With all these things is that, excuse me, hello, sell, okay, is that you can get awfully confused about what you're trying to do, because if you're too busy with other things, jeez, that's close. If you're too busy with other things, you can sometimes not be paying attention to the task at hand. So please, folks, when you're driving, pay attention.
Enter the callow freshman with shining face and marveling eye and a keen surmise about the future. It is his to select his destiny.
As a 21-year-old graduate, all Jim wanted to do was race cars and play in a rock and roll band. Instead, he taught for a while and then worked in a computer company until...
It all started for me just 2 doors down the street from here. I went in to borrow a tool from a neighbor, and he was down in his barn, and his wife said, "Wait a minute, you know a lot about cars. Why don't you write a column for this new newspaper that I'm editing here in the town of Milton, Ontario, the Milton Weekly Tribune?" And I mean, I've read road and track since I was a kid, and always loved cars, but never crossed my mind to be an automotive writer until I started doing this column for this little paper. And I started hanging around. I got to know some of the people in the car business, and through a magic combination of flukes that we don't have time to get into, I found out that the Star job was available, and I applied for it, and again, to my great surprise, I got it.
You're cruising with Jim Kenzie and Automotion.
Well, the Technicolor engineer has come up with some strange music for that intro. He's grinning through the control room window.
The radio show started about a little over a year ago. A guy called me up out of the blue and said, "I've got this concept for Automotion. We'd like you to be the host of Canada's only national radio automotive program." And it's been a lot of fun. We've got literally stations from coast to coast, from Victoria to Halifax, and most places in between. It's a different medium for me, and it has a huge advantage. Not that we don't love dealing with Dan and the boys, but radio, you've got a little digital audio tape recorder. Anywhere you go, you got a radio show. So from that perspective, it's a simple medium to work with. I always say that I have 1 year of racing experience 26 times. I've got 1 year of rock and roll music playing about 35 times. We've been in a band since university days. We just play once in a while. We play 50s and 60s rock and roll, maybe occasional new tunes as well, primarily for parties and birthdays and that kind of stuff. I got the best job in the world, but I always say playing in the band is the most fun that I have.
Although Jim has the pick of any new model in the showroom, his favorite car is still the Hornet.
What people have to understand is that for an automotive journalist, the criteria for their own personal car are cheap, starts, won't be stolen. End of story. Because our cars spend most of their time parked at car company parking lots while we test drive new stuff. It turns out the original owner was a German tool and die maker. Now, I don't want to perpetuate any stereotypes, but Germans have a reputation of being careful with their possessions, shall we say, and tool and die makers make their living by the 10,000th of an inch. Well, this gentleman actually worked for American Motors in Brampton, and the way I heard the story, whether it's true or not doesn't really matter, was that he went down the line with the car when it was being built and said, "This car's mine, build it really good, make it nice and tight." So it came off the line, it was flawless, it was absolutely perfect. He passed away in 1986, and his widow kind of kept it as a shrine to his memory in the garage, put the drape over it, kept it cleaned and polished it. So I went to look at it and I couldn't believe it. It's 77 hatchback. It's orange as only a mid-70s AMC Hornet could be. Double white pinstripe on the side of the car, the white vinyl roof, white vinyl buckets. If the car had an 8-track player, it would be absolutely perfect. Driving an old car like this reminds me of how much technology has improved over the years. This car doesn't have ABS or anti-lock brakes or anything, but it still rides remarkably well and it handles highway speeds with no problem. The engine in this car is a 258 cubic inch 6. It was, as I recall, the one-up motor. There was a 232 cubic inch 6 as well as V8 options, but this one provides plenty of performance. Whether it's in Newfoundland or Victoria, anywhere we go in this country, if people recognize us, it's because of the show. It's not because of the stuff that they see in the star. And it's always great fun. I mean, I personally never get tired of that, of people recognizing us and say we watch the show every week, and it's nice to know that we have a little impact on people's lives. It's a real satisfaction. Digital dashboards, for example, were popular a few years ago, but drivers with bifocals found they couldn't focus on the instrumentation. We're starting to see larger. I tried to go right through it, but it's a hammer. Feelings, nothing more than feelings.
Hammer!
One of the questions I get asked most frequently is, how can I choose a car that's going to be safe? Well, that's not an easy thing to do. First of all cars sold in Canada have to have passed the same
safety standards.
Thank you.
I hope you're rolling on that.
You rolling on that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's for the Christmas reel, right?
This is the all-new second-generation Quest. Now, I liked the first generation primarily because it took all of the right ingredients to have a minivan, but it had an underlying sportiness to its character.
Size-wise, the new Quest has grown in all directions except for wheelbase. It's now about 5 inches longer and 1.5 inches wider. The result is more interior space, particularly in the legroom department. That aside, the exterior changes are subtle to say the least. Not necessarily a bad thing, but a little more imagination wouldn't have gone amiss. Mechanically, there are some significant changes. Power now comes from a 3.3 litre V6 that's good for 170 horsepower and 200 pounds-feet of torque. The throttle response is good, and in the all-important mid-range, there's ample power. 2 drawbacks though. First, if you force the engine to work for its living, it lets you know, getting very noisy as you pass the 3,000 RPM mark. Second, its overall demeanour is more in keeping with a truck than a car-like minivan. One can only wish that the 3.5 litre engine rumoured to be coming in the new Maxima will find its way under the hood. Matched with this motor is a 4-speed automatic that works to perfection. The shifts are all but undetectable, and when you need to drop a gear, it does so quickly.
Rather than make the Quest bigger to counter the #1 complaint previous owners had, Nissan added this 2-tier storage space. Now, while it does work, if it's not loaded, this thing rattles around a lot. The other thing, how on earth do you get this glass open with this wiper in the way? Well, that's where over-engineering comes into the equation. When you put the key in to release the glass, the wiper moves out of the way. Now, it would have been a lot easier for all concerned if they put a stop right on the tailgate and kept the wiper off the glass unless it were in use.
The suspension remains pretty much intact, meaning McPherson struts up front and single-stage leaf springs in back. As with the previous van, the feel is confident and compliant. That said, there is more body roll than I remember in the previous van, and this comes in spite of a rear roll bar that's standard on the SE package. Let's just say whipping through the pylons was more of a tippy-toe affair than I expected. The rack and pinion steering, on the other hand, is fast, linear, and just about the right weight. Stopping power comes from a front disc rear drum setup that's controlled by a standard anti-lock system. Again, no complaints here. The stopping distance is measuring just 119 feet from 80k.
One of the things I've always liked about the Quest is its very flexible seating system. Once you've removed the second seat, it's a matter of just doing that, sliding it forward. Now you can accommodate 5 people and over 50 cubic feet of luggage.
Inside, the treatment is as one expects. The power items including mirrors, locks and windows, a power seat for the driver, a nice clean set of white face gauges and a set of radio and climate controls that are readily accessible and mounted in the right order. You also get a home-link transmitter for the garage door.
You know, Nissan have done a good job with the second generation Quest. It's got all of the right attributes to make it a very popular minivan. The only part for me that I'm a little disappointed in, they've removed some of the sportiness and given us nothing in return.
Staying with Nissan, it's time to update our long-term Altima. To date, we're enjoying better than 30 miles to the gallon. Now, some may say, so what? The fact of the matter is that the Altima does what its immediate competition can without sucking back anywhere near as much fuel. As for ride quality, it ranks right up there. And on a golfing weekend, we managed to shoehorn 4 sets of clubs, overnight bags and sundry other items into the trunk and managed to close the lid, a feat we could not accomplish on a Pontiac Bonneville.
Motoring is going online. The program has joined Autopilot, now allowing you to enjoy the program 24 hours a day around the world. Autopilot software is the creation of Moncton-based the Romlin Group.
Autopilot is a unique filter search engine software that was designed specifically for the auto and motorsport enthusiast. All the significant sites are preloaded within the interface. It's a very intuitive interface that you click and point and it takes you to where you want to go. So it eliminates browsing and it brings you new and exciting information. It's something totally unique to the browser world. It's an enhancement to a website by being presented through Autopilot and through being able to have the push technology and the profiling information that you can get even specific things. If I like Bill Gardner's tip of the week, well, I can get that, or I can get Kenzie's Corner or what have you. So our initiative is global and we're taking motoring on a global trek.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns recharging a battery during the winter months. If for any reason your battery becomes completely discharged when the ambient temperature is below 0 Celsius, here's something I strongly recommend. I suggest that you think seriously about taking the battery out of the vehicle first and removing it to a heated area where you can inspect it and recharge it. For a couple of reasons. First of all, a battery that's been allowed to completely discharge in sub-zero temperatures could easily be frozen solid, and you don't want to try charging a battery in that state. Secondly, you can inspect to see if it has frozen and cracked or damaged the case anywhere. Thirdly, it's the nature or characteristic of batteries that they don't willingly accept a charge in sub-zero temperatures. So you should first allow the thing to come up to room temperature gradually and then begin your charging process. It'll save you time and it'll save you condemning a battery that may simply be too cold to accept a charge willingly. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Well, we're very excited this year that General Motors Canada has accepted the Firebird Firehawk in their Pontiac lineup. 327 horsepower out of the LS1 engine with the Ram Air and our SLP engineering exhaust system. So it's quite an aggressive car, and it's the highest performance Pontiac car that they've had in their showrooms in recent years. We've got a lineup of people that have been waiting. I have names of people that it's 2 or 3 years that they've been waiting for this good news, to have the car actually accepted in a dealership where they can go and have it warranted and any other work done to it. So it's not really a modified car that you have to go out and purchase the extra parts from. It's out of the dealership floor, the same as we're doing with the Camaro SS, but it's the Pontiac enthusiast now. We're aiming for 1,000 for the United States, and I'm looking at 100 for Canada. And if I think we should be able to hit that goal.
The Silhouette Premier is a new model for Silhouette. It's the upper end of our lineup, and it includes a video entertainment system, which we have standard on the Premier. It's exclusive to Oldsmobile and exclusive to the industry for the minivan market. The system is a flip-down flat panel LCD monitor. It's a 5.6-inch diagonal screen. Included with the system is a video cassette player, which is mounted in the front of the vehicle between the driver and passengers in a storage area. In an overhead console, kind of in between the first row and the second row, is where we house some of our headphone units as well. So it works great because then mom and dad can, for example, be sitting in the front row listening to a cassette or a CD or a radio through the speakers in the front. The kids are sitting in the back, they're wearing headphones, they're content, they're happy because they're watching the video and listening to it through the headphones. So everyone's not forced to listen to the same thing. You have a lot of choices. In addition to that, we have also included a video interface. So that allows you to plug in your Sega games, your Nintendo games, a camcorder, your laptop computer, whatever takes a video output, you can plug it into the system. So it's another choice that you can use instead of just watching videos.
Families riding on trains and families riding in minivans. That's coming up next on Kenzie's Corner. Now, this is Motoring.
Jaguar looked in its rearview mirror and liked what it saw. That's this week on Motoring 99. Not a bad show. In fact, it is one of my favorites. But you know, this video screen in this Silhouette could cause some major problems here in the back seats. Imagine the kids trying to decide whose favorite video will get to be played first. And you know, speaking of videos, you may not know this, but without a doubt, the resident movie buff on Motoring is Bill Gardner. And I wonder if Bill had a choice which movie he'd be playing here in this vehicle. Bill?
Brad, I'll tell you, I've seen the first 10 minutes of a lot of movies, but I'm one of those people that just passes out and starts snoring, and then I slowly keel over and end up leaning against the person beside me, and they start elbowing me. I wake up, I've missed 8 or 10 minutes of the movie, and I start asking everybody what's going on in the movie, and then they all get mad at me, and I get kicked out. So the last movie I remember seeing top to bottom was China Syndrome back in the early 80s. And it was pretty significant for me because a couple of days later the 3 Mile Island nuclear accident happened, and so I really remember that movie well. But anyhow, what I want to talk about this week is how to avoid a meltdown on your engine, and that's by picking up on things like oil leaks in the early stages before they can hurt you bad. We're looking at the business end of a 1990 Integra with about 260,000 kilometers on it, and if you look under here, we can see a lot of areas with oil drippings. This is kind of unusual for a Japanese engine, but this one's got pretty high mileage, and that may be part of the situation. There's oil in a lot of places here. Now, I think what's happened here is we've got a very small leak that's been ongoing for a long period of time, and the turbulence underneath the car has blown it into a lot of different locations. Also, the engine cooling fan can tend to blow the oil around the engine bay, and that can confuse the issue when you're trying to diagnose it. One thing you should really remember when diagnosing engine oil leaks, first of all, check out the crankcase ventilation system, because if the PCV valve or the crankcase breather element or any of the plumbing interconnecting those with the engine are giving you problems, it can force oil out of many and varied locations and cause you to have a lot of problems diagnosing it. Another thing that we find as well is that people make the mistake quite often of shampooing off the oil mess to try and diagnose it. In most cases, I find it's easier to pinpoint the leak when you just leave it alone. Because if you follow it back to the source, you'll find that the source is the cleanest spot on the engine. The detergency of the oil has a washing action, and as you get back closer to the source, you're going to find that that area is washed clean by that ongoing oil leakage. Now, after you fix the oil leak, of course, then you can clean off the debris, because that oil can cause a mess. It can get on the exhaust and cause a grease fire and cause your engine mounts to deteriorate, etc. Then you can clean it off. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 99. There's my fan, my biggest fan, my only fan, the engine cooling fan.
We're here at Barton Springs, south of Austin, Texas, and as you can see, families having fun together. And you know why they're having fun? Because there's no television. Back in the 50s when TV started, psychologists were worried that TV would ruin our children. Remember the vast wasteland? Well, you know, they might have been right. As Bruce Springsteen sang so eloquently, 57 channels and nothing's on. More recently, it seems movies have taken over. Because your TV stars are in the movies, your pop singers are in the movies, kids go to the theater, and if they can't go to the theater, they go to the video store. I mean, nobody plays Scrabble anymore. They just keep slapping videos into the VCR and eating popcorn all night. The one place you could be alone with your kids for some quality time was in your car, but as you saw earlier in the show, Oldsmobile's even taken that away from us. You're going to grab your kid from in front of the TV in the living room, pop them down in front of a TV in the minivan. I can see it all now. You're going to head to Florida, you'll stick a feeding tube in one end of your kid and a catheter in the other, and you only have to stop to get more gasoline and more videos. I mean, when I was a kid, we used to sing songs, Old MacDonald Had a Farm, or if you're like that kid in the Chevy Venture, or Luciano Pavarotti area, or do I Spy with My Little Eye? Not anymore. You know what you should do? What we did with our kids, and that's give them a complete holiday once in a while from movies and television. Except for motoring, of course. Oh, by the way, I just got my Motoring 98 shirt. Now it's Motoring 99. I'm Jim Kenzie. Oh, Brad.
You know, you look at this graveyard for automobiles and you can't help but wonder, could there be a former Car of the Year lying around here? Well, we don't have time to look, but I do have time to remind you that next week we present our annual Car of the Year special. So make sure you join us as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
TSN's Motoring 99 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them, and Midas Car Care, the way it should be.